We are going to look at the behavior of some polynomial functions. We will begin by looking at the behavior of a linear function. Linear functions are in the form f of x equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. F of x equals 2x plus 2 is an example of a linear function. The y-intercept is 2 and the slope is 2 for this function. Let's substitute the values 0, 1, 2, 10, 100, and 1,000 for x, and then evaluate the function and see what the corresponding y values are. We see that as the x values increase, so do the y values increase. We can say that as x approaches infinity, so does y approach infinity. Now, let's substitute the values 0, -1, -2, -10, -100, and -1,000. We see that the corresponding y values are going to negative infinity this time. So we can say that as x approaches negative infinity, y approaches negative infinity. In this case, we see that the end behavior is opposite. If we describe the graph reading from left to right, we would say that it is increasing. In other words, it starts in the lower left and goes to the upper right. Now let's look at the behavior of a quadratic function. Quadratic functions are in the form f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. F of x equals x squared minus 2x minus 3 is an example of a quadratic function. The graph of this function is a parabola that opens up. It opens up because the leading coefficient is positive. In this case, a is equal to 1. Now, let's substitute the same values for x that we did in the previous function. Notice that the y values are again increasing. So again, we can say as x goes to positive infinity, y also goes to positive infinity. Now, substituting the negatives of these values for x, we see that y is not going to negative infinity this time. It is going to positive infinity, as we can see on the graph. So we would say as x goes to negative infinity, y goes to positive infinity. We should note that the end behavior for this function is the same. If we were to read this graph from left to right, we would say that it starts in the upper left and ends in the upper right. Now let's look at the quadratic function f of x equals minus x squared minus 4x. This is a parabola that opens down. It opens down because the leading coefficient is negative. A is -1 in this case. Substituting the positive values again, we see that the y values are approaching negative infinity. So in this case, we say as x approaches infinity, y approaches negative infinity. Now substituting the negative values, we see that the y values, again, are approaching negative infinity. So we can say as x approaches negative infinity, y approaches negative infinity. Again, the end behavior is the same. Reading the graph from left to right, we would say that this graph starts in the lower left and ends in the lower right.